So welcome again to everyone, and I hope the info that we shared today is going to be really helpful to you in your caregiver role. So before I get started, I just wanted to sort of encourage everyone to keep in mind that as we move through the presentation today, I'm going to be sharing generalized guidance on home safety based on the information that's currently available. But what I'd like to ask from everyone is that you contribute to the conversation and learning wherever you're able. There's often things that you've learned through your caregiver experience that you can share that might just help someone else on the session today. Sometimes, another caregiver can take away sort of tips and tricks that help make some element of their caregiver smoother from another caregiver that's joined on. All right, so don't be afraid to join in. You can unmute to speak. You can use the chat. You can turn your camera off and on. Okay, so please feel free to do that. We do ask that any questions be held, though, until the end, just in the interest of saving time. And I'll do my very best to leave some space there for us to address those questions and have some discussion at the end. So before we get into the details, I'd like to find out a little bit more about the person you're caring for and what challenges they might be experiencing that put their safety at risk. So I'd like you to answer the following question via the poll. What challenge is the person you are caring for dealing with that may increase the risk of an injury or accident at home? So you should see that poll just pop up on your screen. It's sort of like a little bit of a questionnaire, and you can pick more than one if more than one applies. Is it a decrease in mobility? Are they spending a lot of time at home alone? Are they dealing with dementia, cognition, or memory changes? Do they have a chronic condition such as high blood pressure or diabetes that's not well controlled? Is there a previous fall history? Are they dealing with frailty? So frailty can be defined as sort of just an overall sort of reduced health and functioning. You may see weight loss, low activity, low walking speed, okay? Or is it none of the above? And you're just here to find out more and get ahead and plan ahead. So I'm seeing those answers jumping into the poll now. Thanks very much for answering. That's super. Right? Wonderful. So I'm going to end the poll there and I'm going to share those results. Okay, they're completely anonymous, so we won't know how you answered. Okay, but we see a lot of people dealing with a decrease in mobility, a lot of cognition issues. Okay, falls. I'm going to speak quite a bit to falls today. All right, spending time at home alone. All right. So just to give a sense of what everyone is dealing with, all right? And just knowing too that you're not alone if you're facing these challenges at home, right? Thanks very much, everyone, for sharing. Okay. So let's start out with talking about why we need to talk about home safety and why it's important, all right? So the results of that poll and your comments help explain why we need to talk about home safety. So in a 2020 survey, approximately 90% of Canadians aged 65 and older reported that they would do everything they could to avoid going into long-term care as they age. When we look at people who are at end of life and receiving palliative care services, their first choice of location to receive those services is in the comfort of their homes in familiar surroundings. You should also know that we have a focus on home first by our healthcare system, which is an approach that encourages individuals with medical needs to remain at home wherever possible. This approach also supports the fact that individuals have the right to choose to be in their own home, even if this choice puts them at risk. So this calls upon us as individuals and caregivers to manage our health conditions at home as much as possible. This should be with the proper supports in place, but we also need to think about how can we make the home environment safe and suitable for the health conditions or challenges that need to be managed. Okay? So given the expectation of adapting to a home first approach to care and aging, we need to acknowledge that the presence of certain health conditions can increase the risk of injury in the home setting. Many health conditions and their features contribute to injury risk. So dementia or stroke can lead to impaired judgment and memory, among many other symptoms, okay, that can increase the risk of injury. Unstable control of conditions such as blood pressure, blood sugar can lead to dizziness. Mobility issues, frailty, even pain can make moving around or ambulation difficult. If someone has had a fall in the past, they can end up changing the way they walk so that they might shuffle a little bit or walk slower. These unsafe or unnatural changes in the natural walking pattern can actually contribute to another fall, but it really stems from a fear of falling again. We know people often have many medications that they need to take to manage their health. And the different side effects and the medications together can have a lot of effects on the body, leading to things like drowsiness, poor balance, and coordination. Okay. So if you take a look at this list, all right, of bullets I put here, you'll see that I bolded many of those conditions. How many of these conditions, which were in the poll, is the person that you are caring for dealing with? Okay. This allows you to see how great the risk of injury may be to that person you're caring for and why. The more conditions they're managing, the more prone they are to injury. Okay. And when we look at all of these conditions coupled with those medications side effects, we can identify a particular injury very commonly seen with these health conditions, which is falls. Okay. So we speak generally about falls. They are the most common cause of hospitalization and ER visits in the general population. That is for all age groups. You would be surprised to know that 72% of emergency department visits were for people younger than 65. So it's not just a risk for us as we get older. However, when we look at falls in the 65 and over age group, the risk starts to increase. Keep in mind that this is not directly due to age. The issue is that as we age, we're more likely to be diagnosed with health conditions and or take medications that increase our risk of falling. I spoke briefly in the previous slide about previous fall history. So having one fall now increases the risk of a future fall, particularly if the reason for the fall is unknown and unaddressed. If we know someone tripped over a loose carpet, we can remove it. But if we don't know why they fell and we can't fix the problem, okay, it's likely that they're going to have another fall. Having a fall also leads to fear of falling again and can lead to decreased confidence and decreased independence, leading to an increased reliance and heavier burden on caregivers. And the resulting decrease in physical activity can also have serious effects on overall health and functioning. It's important to know as we move through the information today that approximately 50% of falls do happen in the home. So many of the things I will discuss today in terms of decreasing risk of injury in the home will be centered around reducing the risk of falls. Okay, that will definitely be a large part of the things I talk about implementing. The goal will actually surround sort of reducing fall risk among other injuries. So where do we get started and how do we get started? So first, recognize that some elements of home safety are going to begin outside the home. So getting the information you need about your care receiver's condition is one of the first steps in getting started. Discussions with your family physician or appropriate specialist is going to help you to better understand the diagnosis or diagnoses and how to best manage them. Okay, so you'll have a good understanding of the requirements of their care, how to prevent early decline or progression of their disease. Okay, and also we need to have a good understanding of how the condition may progress over time or what the trajectory will be, because that lets you know what kinds of safety considerations will be necessary in the home as the years go by or the months go by. Community supports and resources, okay? They're going to help you with care in the home, help answer questions and connect you to the appropriate supports as things change over time. And I'm going to be sharing a number of different resources with you as we move through the slides, okay? I want to talk briefly about two particular members of the healthcare team that can be especially important if you're planning to, make modifications in the home or try to make it as safe as possible. And that is occupational therapists and physiotherapists. So these professionals really can start to get involved when care elements such as bathing, dressing, making meals, and mobility becomes more challenging. They can come to the home, provide an assessment of the environment and the abilities of the individual, and also help to improve home accessibility with the use of appropriate assistive devices. They can even provide some teaching on how to build skills to avoid falls, right? So there'll be a lot of people within the circle of care to help provide support at home, but these particular professionals really can help to increase and maintain physical functioning and independence and delay decline and really do help towards making homes safer by suggesting alterations to the home environment that is best suited to the person you're caring for. Excuse me. All right, my slide didn't want to move. So I do recognize that this is reiterated over and over again in every talk, but I can't overemphasize the importance of healthy habits such as eating well, getting adequate sleep, and engaging in regular physical activity and its relationship to staying safe. Staying healthy positively impacts every element of our lives. I've always said exercising, eating well, those things, there isn't anything it doesn't improve. And that extends as well to allowing us to remain injury-free and live as independently as home for as long as possible. So if there's anything that the person you're caring for can do to sort of, you know, uh, help maintain their mobility, their flexibility, their independence through, even if it's something as small as chair exercises, we do encourage that because it's kind of a move it or lose it kind of situation. The more they continue to do, the more they may be able to do. And I know everyone's different and they may not have those capabilities, but finding those areas where we can maximize, their potential is really important. And it's important to staying home as well. And I'm going to speak to that as we move through. So is there a way that we can keep them as physically active as possible over time? That's going to help. So these are some options for getting connected to community and home services, right? So I will share these resources later. So if you're wanting to keep them for yourself, don't frantically write them down. I will share, okay? These are going to help you get access to things like that occupational therapist or that physiotherapist, maybe some respite, some break for you, or get a PSW to come in, all right? So those are the supports that you'll need to help keep that person at home successfully. So you've probably heard of Ontario Health at Home. They were CCAC, then they were the LHIN, then they were Home and Community Support Services, and as of last summer, I believe they're now Ontario Health at Home. So you can see by the name how the focus is really on, having people stay well at home for as long as they can. So that is one place where you can self-refer and sort of get connected to a lot of different supports, including potentially a care navigator as well. The Ontario Caregiver Organization, they have a helpline that everyone in the province can call, and they can tell them, what you're dealing with, and they can try to connect you. Links to Care Community Navigation, so that's available in Halton, but not Burlington. Burlington is a different sort of health service region than sort of Oakville, Milton, Georgetown. They can help as well with navigating to resources. Mississauga Senior Health Seniors Navigation Portal, again, self-referral. Go on, you can fill out some information. They will connect you to resources as well as a navigator. If you're in Halton as well, the Connected Care Halton OHT navigation line, give them a call, connect you to services. And if you're anywhere in the Hamilton, Mississauga corridor, Able Living has a navigation service as well. Okay. Thank you, Kimberly. So Kimberly has added as well into the chat that Central Registry as well is also a service that can help connect people to resources as well. Okay. Thanks, Kimberly. I can share that in the post email as well. So if you have some resources that you know about, please feel free to share, what you've used in the past, or if you're on here as a care provider and you are able to, service clients in some way or caregivers in some way, please add that to the chat and we can make note of that. This is, again, it's an opportunity to share. So thanks, Kimberly. Okay. When we're talking about emergency planning throughout the home, okay, there's just some things I think even if you're not a caregiver, you'd want to make sure that you've got, right? But making sure we're keeping up on on whether things like fire extinguishers and carbon monoxide monitors and fire alarms are in good working order is really important here because the sooner you can get an alarm that something is wrong, is the sooner that you might be able to, do something about it. When we have someone in the home that cannot move quickly, or they may be confused or have issues with cognition, think about how quickly you'd be able to move them out of the home, right? So if we can get a smoke detector that is going to give us an early alert, or we have a fire extinguisher in working order that can extinguish a small fire, okay? Then we don't have to jostle up that person and move them out of the home quickly, or you're going to have more planning time to get them out of the home. So, besides the basic reasons we want to have these things in place, if we've got somebody with mobility issues and so forth, we need that extra time, to plan for an emergency if they're in the home. So making sure that those carbon monoxide and fire alarms have, the batteries in good working order. So changing them every 6 months, maybe when you turn the clock back, and making sure that you know how to use a fire extinguisher. People don't use very often, thankfully, but think about how versed you are in using a fire extinguisher, right? And I will share a resource on that later as well. Okay. Um, what about a fire escape plan? Okay, so if you do need to get them out of the house, how will you do this quickly? Who can help? All right. What is the plan? Where's the meetup spot if you need to get out of the home quickly? All right, so these kinds of things should be thought about early on. Does the person you're caring for, excuse me, stay at home alone a lot? What is the plan if they fall or have a medical emergency when you're not there? So these can cause a lot of anxiety, but if you can make a plan, it can help you feel reassured that in the unlikely event of an emergency, you or your care receiver will know what to do and who to call and who can help. If they're home alone, you might want to think about getting an emergency response system. So it might wear something around their neck that they can press the button if they fall. Some systems will sense a fall and trigger an alert on its own. Even if you're home with them, and you might not be able to get them up on your own based on your own physical abilities. You may also both end up injured if you tried. So if there's no obvious injury after they've had a fall and the person is still conscious, you can call 911 for assistance. They'll triage the call, they'll send EMS, and they may do a bit of an assessment of the individual and see, do they need any treatments? Do they need to go to the hospital? Okay, but they just, they may be able to treat them there, and of course help get them up. All right, so just know that that's an option. If the person you're caring for does fall and you need some help getting them up. Don't try to do it yourself. Okay. Thinking about power failures, weather events. We're supposed to get a lot of snow, maybe ice tomorrow. It may end up in a power outage. Okay. So we want to keep stocked up on batteries, flashlights, bottled water. Don't wait till medications are on the last. Okay. Make sure you're staying a few weeks ahead. Okay. And any medical supplies that they may need. Okay. Emergency contact list is a great thing to have. Okay, we know we can call 911, but there are some other sort of less urgent, contacts that we may want to have tacked up sort of on a bulletin board in the home or somewhere where it's easily found, in the event of an emergency, or if the person that you're caring for is cared for by someone else to give you a bit of a break. There may be a time when you have a personal emergency requiring you to spend time away from your care receiver. And so someone who's there may need to know how to reach these types of supports. So your family doctor, specialist, or anyone that's managing their care, if you're fortunate to have a care navigator or care coordinator through Ontario Health at Home or any other community service, pharmacist, okay? They should have, if you're going to the same pharmacist all the time, they should have a list of current medications and dosages that, people could call up if they had a question. They're usually a fantastic first resource for any medication questions, often better than your family doctor. All right, so that's a good person to have on that contact list. Any nearby family members or neighbors, okay? If you've got someone close by that's willing to help, count yourself as lucky, okay? Perhaps there is a neighbor. I know I've got wonderful neighbors that have come to help us if we need it. All right, so would they be willing to help out in a pinch? You might want to list their name, their number and name as well. Any other support contacts that you can think of in your circle, okay, that might be able to come in the case of an emergency. Um, and if your person you're caring for has something like dementia or any cognitive changes, things like responsive behaviors, for example, it might be helpful to make a list of caregiver tips, all right, tips and tricks and things that you know work to help manage or understand these behaviors for people who are less familiar but might be coming to help for a period of time. Okay, so put this up anywhere in easy view. Okay, the fridge, the bulletin board, by the phone if you still have a landline. Most people don't. Okay, we can store them in your cell phone. That's always great, but have them available for somebody who might be needing to see those in your absence. Okay. So these are some resources in a Peel region in Halton, okay, that have some additional, outside of what I've suggested, some additional resources um, for planning for emergencies. They can help you create a safety plan with special groups in mind, such as children or individuals with specific disabilities, such as hearing loss or mobility issues. I don't have the time sort of to go into in depth with, I know for those specific types of challenges, but these websites can help link you to some tips there. So I will share those later. Okay. So I'm going to move across a few home rooms in the home and suggest some changes. And bear in mind that all of these changes will not be required. Think about the person you're caring for, what seems reasonable based on their current status, what is doable, what is a priority, and also think about the changes not just in terms of safety, but also in terms of what changes might help to keep them not just safe, but as independent as possible. Any modifications or alterations you might make will ideally help to preserve their dignity, maintain their safety, and also help decrease some of your caregiving responsibilities. That is a goal as well. So generally speaking, um, consider arranging that home safety assessment that I mentioned earlier with an occupational therapist or physiotherapist. Okay, they're going to come in, take a look at the home, take a look at your care partner, and help sort of prioritize some areas where changes can be made based on their abilities. Lighting is really important. So with certain health conditions, or certainly as we age, our vision is really sensitive to changes in light. Okay, so we want to make sure that the light is good inside and outside of the home. Okay, around stairways, inside and outside as well. Do you have a light switch at the top of your stairs as well as at the bottom? Right? There should be a light switch on both sides. If the person you're is that you're caring for gets up frequently at night, you may want to add some night lights to help avoid turning on overhead lights or avoid them sort of stumbling around in the dark. If cost is an issue, you can get a motion sensor night light that won't have the light on all night. They'll just sort of sense when there's movement and come on when needed. The three C's, carpet, cords, and clutter, these really can get underfoot and be a real trip and fall hazard. Removing these as much as possible, particularly in high traffic areas, can really help reduce the risk of injury. A lot of people like to throw down carpets in a lot of areas in the home. And they really can be things that you trip over the edge, or if they don't have a rubber backing, they can be really slippery. So consider where we can remove those. If you need to have cords for maybe medical equipment, try running them along the walls. You may need to get an extension cord to do that. But if we can make the cord longer and sort of run it along the wall so it's not across high traffic areas, that's great. And you can find these clips to sort of clip them to the wall at the local hardware store. If the person you're caring for has mobility challenges or uses a mobility aid, maybe they've been discharged from hospital and they maybe even have a temporary mobility issue where we're walking around or moving around the home is challenging. You may need to rethink sort of how furniture is placed, as they may require more space to maneuver around safely. If they've got a walker or even a wheelchair, some things may need to be moved so that they can sort of get in and around, the typical spaces in the home. There's even some specialized types of furniture and devices that can be considered as well for mobility challenges. So these are things that an OT assessment can also help with. I see that Leanne has added to the chat, acclaimhealth.ca has a free 12-week in-home exercise program. So thank you very much, Leanne. We really welcome those resources. I can't speak to all of them in the session today, so please do add them, and I'll get those out to everybody in their post email later this week. So thanks very much, Leanne. The stairs. So this is one of the top two places in the home for injuries, okay, is the stairs. And it's very difficult to avoid stairs where we live. It's pretty much, I don't know what the percentage is, but the majority of homes, certainly in the areas where we live, I don't know about other provinces, have stairs. Unless you're in a condo or an apartment, it's really tough to avoid stairs. So we need to figure out how we can sort of maneuver with stairs safely. So looking for uneven surfaces, stairs are a high traffic area, they tend to wear down. So, are they uneven? Are they worn down? Is there any staples, carpet staples over time that can protrude from the carpet? Okay, so we need to look for that. Handrails are essential. They need to be secure. They need to also be gripped properly. So if you look at this stairway here, this sort of slab of wood, it looks nice and fancy, but somebody who needed to really grip that for good support wouldn't be able to get their hand all the way around it. Okay, so when you get a handrail, ideally it needs to be of a circumference where your hand can go all the way around. Right, so think about if you've got that in your home. You may not. Okay, but we want to have handrails on either side, ideally, of the stairway, and we can get our hand all the way around it. Because people tend to grip it more and more over time for support, we need to be checking it frequently to make sure it's not becoming loose. Okay. Putting strips on the edges of the stairs to help with visibility. People with cognitive changes may have difficulty with perception, so putting some colored strips on the edge of the stairs may help. Not storing anything on the stairs. I know at my home, someone might put their purse on the stairs and say, oh, I'm going upstairs later, I'll take it later. Trying to keep the stairs clutter-free. And no loose carpets or any kind of coverings on stairs and landings. Really can't stress that enough. Okay. The loose carpets are a risk and the stairs are a risk. If we sort of mix them together, we can have, sort of double the injury likelihood. A major concern with the kitchen safety, of course, is the stove. And we know that some people love to cook, right? And if they still enjoy that, it might be difficult for them to understand the need for, monitoring to keep them safe. So there are a few things that can be done. Um, in terms of people's pocketbooks, it depends on what you can afford, but there are stove guards, which are automatic timers that will sense when there's no movement in the kitchen, but the stove is on and automatically turn it off for people who have put the stove on and perhaps forgotten about it. Um, you can turn off the fuse to the stove if you're not there, or it's not in when it's not doesn't need to be used, and you're not sure if they may turn it on. That will sort of render it, of course, no one will be able to use it. Cooking together. So this could be a time that sort of make a meal and spend some time, cooking together. And it may not be perceived as being actually monitored in the kitchen. It may actually just be seen as, we're spending some time together making this meal. So they'll get to engage in cooking the way they like, and you'll be able to keep an eye out. Okay. Any timers, alarms, or signs as reminders. There may come a time when some of the appliances need to be secured. So the fridge door or the washer dryer. There's a number of different locks that can be purchased. Um, the the lock though needs to be for an adult. So we know there's one for children, but these particular locks are designed to withstand the strength of an adult pulling on them. So keep that in mind. If we need to use any mats or stools, we would ideally want them without any rubber backing or feet, but ideally we're not using any of those things to reach up into cupboards. Okay. Antoinette, I will share with you where to get the stove guard later in the session or after in the post email. Okay, I'll remember to send that out. A few more tips for kitchen safety. So we want cupboards and countertops sort of arranged in a way so that frequently used items are easily reached. So we don't really need to go up on stools very often. And anything that's not being used, such as small appliances, are sort of put away and tucked away, just for less confusion. Um, if they're still capable of using, sharp items, but they, sort of don't have the dexterity, um, an occupational therapist can come in with some modified, sort of utensils so that they can still cook and prepare meals safely. If they don't have the judgment to be able to use sharp items, making sure they're tucked away. Locking up hazardous chemicals and cleaning agents. I did read that poison is actually quite a risk in the home. I didn't know that, but it can happen. Keeping areas clean and dry, I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer, but we might decide to clean up a little bit of water later as we're cooking. But we want to clean those up immediately while someone who has mobility or balance challenges or perception challenges are in the kitchen because they're going to be more likely to fall and really less likely to recover easily from a fall. So making sure that we clean up any spills quickly. And not just water, but also sometimes as we make meals, we have sort of grease buildup over time. And those can actually be a fire hazard. Okay. It's a difficult time in terms of, food security. People will hold on to food. So if, the person you're, caring for still maintains their own home, please just take a look out into their fridge or freezer for expired dates or anything that looks or smells bad. They might be wanting to hold on to things, because of cost. So just considering that, food, food poisoning, again, in people who have health conditions or they're older, they do not bounce back well from a bout of food poisoning. So we do want to um, make sure that we're purging those types of things from the kitchen. So these are some of the items I mentioned. Okay, so the stove guard that attached to the stove. These are some not kitchen knob replacements. Okay, so they also will sense um, if someone is not in the kitchen or there's no movement and the stove's been left on, and send a reminder to the person or alarm. They actually have some capability to send a remote notification to a caregiver or family member. These are examples of a refrigerator lock and a cabinet lock, okay, to keep sort of the those things safe, right? I didn't check all of the costs of these items. The stove knobs are around 200. The cabinet locks are about $20 for two locks. And the guard lock on the fridge was $15 on Amazon. Okay. If the stove option is too expensive, another thing that can be done is the knobs can be removed from the stove. That's another thing that can be an option as well. Okay, because I know cost is a factor, but these are some things that are out there depending on your budget. The bathroom, of course, is the second place in the house where there are a lot of injuries. So we want to make sure that we've got non-slip surfaces as much as possible. Okay, which is really tough because of the wetness and humidity. So keeping everything as dry as possible after bathing. Bath strips in the bathtub. So I know people are partial to those bath masks with the suction cups. I can speak from personal experience that I had a terrible injury slipping on a bath mat that was not properly secured. So the strips are a lot safer. They're sort of peel and stick, and they create a great surface where people it's a non-slip surface for people without the risk of the bath mat, which can be loose. Okay. And then you can replace them over time if they're becoming free, right? If we have to use the bath mat, which oftentimes, we're coming out of the bath and it's wet and we need to step on something, be sure it has a really good rubberized backing so that there isn't any slipping. If you've got a lock on the bathroom door, make sure it has an emergency release. That can cause a lot of anxiety for caregiver and care receiver if someone gets locked in by themselves. Right? And a big part of being, having the person be as independent as possible with their personal care and enjoy, bath time or shower time as much as possible. Maybe getting those bathroom supports in there as they become necessary. Okay. So those things sort of look like this. So these are some common bathroom supports, and there's many. But these are common things that we will see over time be added or need to be added to the bathroom. So grab bars, as you see all around the bathroom stall there. Okay. This is a shower chair or transfer bench as well, can be helpful, not just to sit on as people are in the shower, but also to go from, one surface to another. Maybe they are going from a wheelchair and they need to transfer into the shower. Okay. The toilet here, it's a raised toilet seat because people, again, as over time, it might be really hard to go down as low as the toilet is. So we raise the seat up a little bit, okay, and also get some armrests. And that can help them push off or, get easier to get in and off the toilet as needed when some of those mobility challenges start to become evident. Okay. In the bedroom, okay, I think the first challenge of the bedroom may be just getting upstairs, right? So think about or challenge the idea of where you have the bedroom, okay? Is there another space in the home, a study, or some other room on the main floor that might be easier when mobility becomes a challenge and the stairs are really difficult to navigate? Is there a room that can be changed over to a bedroom now? And maybe that study's moved upstairs, right? It's just a thought to think outside of the box. Maybe not, but sometimes that becomes possible and it might be something you're able to do. When we're thinking about a bed, okay, again, it's one of those things over time. It might be difficult to get in and out of the bed. We don't want it to be too low or too high. That's somewhere where someone can fall. So we can, if the bed is too low, we can raise it with blocks. All right, and I'll show you some furniture blocks. Or when things become, if they have a condition that's progressing, over time, they may be eligible for a mechanical bed, right? And that's something, again, they can be assessed for. And that can really help with getting in and out of bed. Bed rails are another thing that can go on the sides of bed, okay? to help them get in and out. I'm going to show you what those look like in a minute. Call bells. All right. So if they have a way to call a caregiver when they need to get to the washroom, that really can help reduce the risk of falls. Sometimes it may become necessary for them to have what's called a commode beside the bed. So that's a little sort of a chair, with the bottom sort of cut out that they can use to go to the washroom without having to rush off to another room to do that. Okay. Many falls occur when there's declining bladder and bowel continence. People are afraid they're going to not make it to the washroom, so they start to rush and then they fall. So how can they summon someone for help quickly? Or is there another option for them, particularly at night, maybe to not have to go to the washroom, if they need to go. All right. So I'm going to show you what that commode looks like as well, if you're not familiar. Okay. Keeping frequently used items nearby, so glasses, the remote control, a phone, lessens them having to get up frequently and lessens you having to maybe be called to get these things. Okay. That night light and that lighting, really important. Is there a lamp at the bedside? Is the light switch to the bedroom close to the doorway? Right? We don't want people groping around in the dark. Okay. And making sure that the walkways are clear. So these are some of those items I mentioned. So that's the bed rail. Okay, this is a commode. It can be set up and they can go to the washroom there. And then it can be emptied without them having to rush to the washroom, maybe just at night. It's not something people are keen to use. And I understand that, but sometimes we have to think about, the fact of rushing or, a fall. Maybe at nighttime, this might be a good option, or at least another option. The furniture risers, okay, so you can put them under the feet of the bed or a chair and help to lift it up if it's too low. Okay, so those are some items as well. And there's lots of things throughout the home, lots and lots of things that can be considered. So these are just a snapshot. Okay. So if you're looking for someone to help you with some of these changes, looking for local handyman for jobs around the home, online, there's the Nextdoor app that we have here. I don't know if it's everywhere, but people just sort of chat on it and they recommend people for things like odd jobs, a plumber. Okay, you do need to do your homework. Maybe asking friends and family for referrals is ideal, but those are some places to look. There are some community service organizations that provide home maintenance. Canes links to care. The Healthline is a website that has lots of community resources based on the region you live in. If you're savvy, maybe you can look on YouTube for a few how-to videos for small jobs. If there's little modifications around the home, you might be able to manage them yourself or with a little bit of instruction. The government tax credits for bigger changes. So you might be eligible for some money back or some credits through some of these government tax benefits. The Ontario Tax Talk webinars are offered through the Ministry of Finance. They did do a talk for us last year. They do have talks coming up throughout the winter, so I will post how to get involved or register for those as well. A few things outside the home. Again, we want to make sure things are in really good repair. All our walkways, entrances. It's winter time. Is there snow? Is there ice buildup? Okay. What are we doing about that? How are we getting rid of that? Again, the stairway, does it have a good handrail on it? Okay. Maybe over time we need to add a ramp if mobility comes to a point where we need to have a wheelchair. And I know those things are costly, but something to keep in the back of your mind. Are all the doorway entries and exits level or low? Do we need to step up? sometimes we can add sort of this little sort of level sill here to help people get in and out of the home a little more easier. Okay. And I know all of these things cost money, but thinking about them and, maybe you don't need them right now, but it might be down the road, something to budget for, just to, sort of put a bug in your ear that these are some of the things that outside the home can make things easier. If EMS needs to find you, is your house number really well lit and visible? Okay, so making sure that that's a possibility, or that's addressed. Okay. So outdoor maintenance resources, it's winter time. Who can help move the snow? When that big snowplow finally comes by, I know they left a big mound in front of our driveway last Sunday. So there are some windrow, that's what that's called, that big mound. There is a windrow removal program in these areas and likely other areas as well in the GTA. It does have some cost. I think it's 115 in the Halton region. Mississauga, it's 200, but Mississauga does have the ability to do an assessment, and you may have it covered based on your financial criteria. But those programs do exist for people who are over 65 who do not or have a disability that do not have an able-bodied person living with them. Okay, you can sign up for that program. The Snow Angels program will help remove walkway and laneway snow removal. I know they're in Hamilton. They're kind of a volunteer organization that's kind of popping up in different areas. So that's something to look into. Again, those community boards and apps that, I've seen many people on there offering snow removal. They'll do a one-time snow removal for $40 or $50 because oftentimes people want to have you sign up for a big contract and you don't want to commit to that. So it's really great that some people will come for $40 and just do it one time for you. Okay. And then there's family, friends, neighbors, high school students who might be able to come and pitch in and give you a hand with, raking leaves or moving the snow, right? So Kimberly adds it starts in November to sign up for the windrow programs. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I have that it runs through the fall and into end of March. Okay. So I will share some information about that as well. So I'm going to take a minute to focus on one particular area of health that is, often something that really can impact the ability to live safely and independent at home, and that is dementia or declining cognitive abilities. And we could do many presentations on this. We just sort of a snapshot really today on this particular medical condition, but I do think it bears highlighting because so many people are dealing with this as they provide care to a loved one. So I just want to take a minute to sort of highlight some of the finer points of trying to care for someone and keep them safe at home. So dementia we know is a set of symptoms caused by disorders affecting the brain and in a really short form. It causes a decline in mental ability that it can affect daily life. Okay. We know Alzheimer's disease, but Alzheimer's disease is only one form of dementia. There's many under that umbrella. There's vascular dementia, dementia with Lewy bodies, young onset dementia, frontotemporal dementia. There's many dementias. Okay. And the changes that occur, such as decreased mobility, impaired judgment, the changes that happen with memory. There's can be a general sort of lack of insight, so choices are impacted. These are the things that can lead to injury risk. Okay. There's even a relationship between dementia and higher risk of things like falls, poisoning, and even choking. Okay, which makes sense because as we get older, the coordination it takes to sort of manage the muscles as we swallow can be impacted. So it really is something that can really make it difficult to provide care at home in a safe manner and in many realms. these are the changes that we can see with dementia. So decreased balance and reaction time. There can be changes in mood or behavior. Judgment is impaired. There's visual perceptual changes. Remember, I talked about people who are going up and down the stairs. They may need those strips. Their perception's different. Okay, there's the changes in certain areas. They have difficulty sort of interpreting things. There's impairment of memory. Even language is affected. Okay, and there's just a lack of insight into environment and situations that making the right choice challenging for them. You may see some of these changes in somebody that has something called mild cognitive impairment. So this is different than dementia in that those changes don't impact quality of life yet. Okay. In dementia, we've got significant changes in the brain that reduce an individual's ability to perform everyday activities. With mild cognitive impairment, they're still managing okay. Okay. You may see some of these things here that I've highlighted in orange, okay, but they can still sort of manage day to day. In both cases, though, whether it's dementia or mild cognitive impairment, there's likely some need for increased monitoring and support and the need to make some changes. Okay. So we need to understand that home adjustments, okay, are again, they are made to support um, independence and decision making as much as possible. It's not just to bubble wrap everything. We want to know how we can make a safer space that allows some freedom and again gives you some peace of mind and reduces caregiving responsibilities. Any changes, of course, need to be introduced gradually. Okay, so we're making changes as things progress and striking a balance between changing what is necessary and keeping what is familiar. Moving things like carpets, clutter, locking away hazardous materials or sharp items. Okay, we want to focus on prevention. What can we do to sort of get ahead of any challenges? We may need to simplify routines and slow down. Those changes that occur with dementia are going to call for increased time to complete tasks. So slowing down and breaking tasks into smaller steps can help reduce the risk of accidents. Okay. And can we create a dementia-friendly room or space in the home? Okay, think about things they enjoy, dressing up, drawing, working with their hands. Okay, this can help, pass the time. Um, we can do it based, of course, on their level of ability. All right, but what can we do to create a space that's all theirs where they don't need lots of monitoring? And we'll give them some time on their own that they can enjoy. I went to a talk and someone said they had a mother, I believe, that really loved to dress up. So they made a space with clothing and things that she could do to sort of dress up and spend some time on her own. And I thought that was a really neat idea. And we may not all have that capability, all right, but just food for thought. Okay. We really need to balance here between safety and overprotection recognize and appreciate existing abilities. Right? Too many changes may actually be limiting and decrease self-esteem and self-sufficiency. So these are some suggestions. And again, there's many, many, many things, okay, that can help individuals with dementia live at home safely. This clock here can help to keep people on time and on track, with what time of day it is, may help with routines. This is a safety alert motion sensor to sense any falls or movement. The door mural can be put over the door for people who wander. So they don't actually see a door, it just looks like a bookcase. So that they don't, sort of open the door and get out, can have some peace of mind to caregivers. And then this is a door lock that we have here as well to help with people sort of getting outside of the home and wandering. Okay. I will send a resource to where we can find some of these things. Really important to figure out what's appropriate, though, for the person that you are caring for and the stage and ability that they're at. Okay, because there's lots and lots of things. Okay. Dementia-friendly space I mentioned. Okay, so thinking about, there's small things that we wouldn't think about. that might cause, reflections or shadows. It might look like there's someone else in the house. So pulling the blinds at night so that those reflections are hidden. When we, in the window, we might need to cover mirrors. Contrasting colors for plates and placemats. So we might want to put a red plate on a blue placemat because colors may blend. It might make it difficult. Surfaces with bold patterns can be confusing, as can floor patterns and finishes. And people walk from a carpet to a hardwood floor. Sometimes that's confusing for people. So keeping finishes as consistent as possible. And I know that's tough, but just something to think about that might be a fall risk for them if there's lots of different patterns on the floor. Okay. Simple signage and labels on drawers and cupboards can help people to remember and locate items so they can, again, increase their independence. Maybe they can get dressed on their own or make a small meal on their own if they have these small reminders around. So quickly, this is a dementia-friendly room. Okay. So we have a number of things here to help somebody with dementia stay safe and independent in their space. So we have contrasting sheet colors. We've got a night light on that far wall. There's a yellow, if you see beside the bathroom, there's a yellow strip sort of around the light switch to help people find that light. Because if it's white wall with a white switch, it can be difficult to find. There's labels on the little chest of drawers with, blouses, cardigans that help them get dressed on their own. There's some clothes laid out, so you can sort of put all the rest of the clothes away and then leave out the clothes for the day. They can get dressed on their own. The window has a blind that can be pulled again, so at night we don't see reflections and get frightened of people that, they don't recognize themselves. So this is a really great example of a dementia-friendly room. Okay. I know we're right down to the wire here. So we have some supports here, and again, there's many, 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 many dementia supports. The By Us For Us guide was written by a group of people that have dementia to let you know what is helpful. They want to let you know from someone who has dementia, from their perspective, what's helpful for them. The Alzheimer's Society has chapters throughout, tons of resources, education, social workers, caregiver support groups. And then Alz Educate is a platform that is strictly Alzheimer's education, very high level education programs, typically webinars that are free. You just need to create an account to join, but it's a wonderful resource.